Rewriting Genesis. Now, I'm not planning on rewriting Genesis because it's actually already been done. I was just thinking about Garden of Eden, Eve and Adam, and the story goes that Adam was put into this perfect garden. He was given a job to, name all the animals and to take care of the garden. And before this, he has no awareness of being alone. He's surrounded by animals. He's walking every day and communing with God. And then all of a sudden, he becomes aware that he doesn't have a mate. And so, you know, that is alleviated when he gets Eve. And, there is a commandment for them not to eat from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And of course, the serpent comes in, and Eve eats. Adam's right there when she eats, listening to the whole conversation between the serpent and his wife, says nothing. She eats, she gives him the fruit, he eats. And then they cover themselves in, some clothing because now they realize that they are naked and they're ashamed. And then when God comes and calls out, "Where are you?" Which, of course, God, should know. Strange question. And Adam says, "We were afraid and we hid." And then God says, "What have you done?" And first thing Adam does is throw her under the bus. "The woman you gave me the fruit and I ate." And then she says, "Yeah, I did, but it was the serpent, who tempted me, and I did eat." And so we start off from this perfection with Adam not taking accountability, throwing his wife under the bus, and God kicks them both out of the Garden of Eden. And now, fast forward to all of Christianity and its beliefs. And in this story, Adam and Eve were punished equally. They both were kicked out. They both got a punishment. Adam having to till the ground with, the sweat of his brow. Eve having pain in childbirth and desiring her husband and him ruling over her. So submission was actually a curse, which, if you go with what the Bible says, we've been redeemed from the curse. So neither one of those things should still exist. And, everything should be taken care of in terms of the curse of the law, right? So, but again, Adam and Eve were both punished. But if we look at Christianity and the way that this story is framed, it has been cited as the reason why women shouldn't be able to do much of anything. They shouldn't be able to be leaders. They shouldn't be able to be the head of the household. They shouldn't be able to make decisions without their husband. They need to sit in church and be silent, so on and so forth, because she was the one who took the fruit and gave it to her husband. But again, when the Bible talks about the story later, it says that through Adam, all men fell. He was the first Adam, and then Jesus was the second Adam to rectify what the first Adam had done wrong. It doesn't mention Eve at all in who was to blame and who was accountable for, quote, the fall. It mentions Adam, but Christianity and all of its doctrines have blamed Eve. So it almost seems as if they've rewritten Genesis to make Adam blameless and make Eve the fall guy, to make men blameless and to make women to blame. And much of patriarchy is about giving men the benefit of the doubt, coddling them, praising them, making sure that we know boys will be boys, well, men are just clueless about things like that. And, you gotta you gotta, he's just a man, he's just a man and he's doing the best he can. You know, all of these things that they tell us over and over and over again. Well, he's got his needs and you can't tempt him, because he's, that lust is, oh my goodness. How is he going to overcome it? How is he going to resist it? You've got to be the one woman to cover up, to make sure you give in to him, that you placate him, that you stroke his ego. You can't talk to him in a straight way. No, you have to flatter him and you have to sugarcoat everything you say and you have to coddle him and mollycoddle him and, pamper him and, submit and comply and all this stuff. So once again, like I said, it's like everything that started off equal, that started off with both of them facing punishment, with both of them having consequences, with both of them being talked to by the Creator, has become to where, nope, it's all on women and they're all to blame and they're the reason and woe is me. This woman that you gave me, she's the source of everything that happened that was wrong. Now, if the Creator didn't listen to that line of excuses, why has that been pushed since, Christianity began? And why do people still believe it? Because patriarchy tells them to, I guess. Because they've been brainwashed and conditioned and hurted enough to where they believe it's the truth. But I just thought I would bring it up. What do you guys think? Please check out my podcast, Zenergy, Zennurgy. Please check out my books on Amazon. I have 5 of them. My name is Zen Ashe, 2 words, Zen.